Hi, welcome to another episode of Biz Jet TV, where today we're going to be talking about 5 things you need to avoid when you're buying a biz jet. And the first one we're going to talk about is changing the terms of the deal halfway through the deal. The second one is why to avoid subject to finance deals. Number 3, using non-aviation lawyers. Number 4, don't put in lowball offers. And number 5, don't do the deal on your own. So let's get straight into it and off we go. Hi, my name is Fabrizio Poli. I'm your host here on Biz Jet TV, and today we're talking about these 5 things you have to avoid when buying a biz jet. And the first one we're going to get into now is changing the terms of the deal halfway through. Now, when you're buying an aircraft, it's not like buying a car. It's quite an elaborate process, and it's important that you bring on professionals to help you with the transaction. Now, there's 2 elements here I'd like to talk about. One is the pre-buy inspection, and one is the aircraft purchase agreement. Now, the aircraft purchase agreement, you have to put certain elements in there and agree on the numbers. So it's very important when you engage an engineer to do the pre-buy inspection that he prepares a work scope. Now, the work scope is the list of things that needs to be checked during the pre-buy inspection. Now, of course, if you're buying an older aeroplane, the pre-buy inspection needs to be a lot more thorough than if you're buying a newer or a new aircraft. So it's important that the engineer comes up with the work scope. You send that across to the lawyers, and the lawyers will put certain elements into the aircraft purchase agreement. Now, this is important that you say things like, if we find this, then the seller pays for it. If this is found, then the seller pays for that, and put all these elements in there so that when you do go into the pre-buy inspection, let's say you've agreed to pay $22 million for the airplane, and then suddenly something crops up like some corrosion or whatever, and that turns out to be $1 million job, you suddenly knock $1 million off, and that wasn't in the aircraft purchase agreement. So it's important to sort of cover all your bases in the aircraft purchase agreement, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to upset the seller. So it's important to be transparent and sort of put everything out there up front in the beginning. What you don't want to do is the bait and switch, which some people do on these deals. It's very, very important to get this right. So it's important to have a good engineer that you work with and a lawyer that can get these 2 things sorted out, and so that you don't change the numbers halfway through the deal. That's very, very important. The second thing I'd like to talk about is subject to finance deals. Now, this happens when you're buying an aircraft and you've put some money down, and the rest is going to be financed by a financial institution or a bank. So you usually put down about 5% of the purchase price into escrow. That's non-refundable. That money goes in there, and then it usually takes about 2 weeks to get approval for the finance. And in the meantime, once the LOI has been accepted and the money's in escrow, the owner of the aircraft will take the airplane off the market. So just to give you time to do all the pre-buy inspections and all the other things, and all the legal side of the deal. But what has to be, well, you have to be careful. If you make sure that you're using a reputable finance company that know you, because they're obviously going to check the airplane, the documents about the airplane, because they're going to own it basically until you pay it off. And the other element is they want to make sure that your company or you as an individual can afford to pay the loan. So it's advisable for you to use someone you've worked with in the past that's financed you maybe other types of deals, so that it's going to be a swift deal and not going to take longer than 2 to 3 weeks. Because otherwise what will happen is, if it starts to drag on and the rest of the money hasn't popped into escrow, then what the owner of the aircraft will probably do is sell it to somebody else. And you spent all this money, legal money for the engineer to do pre-buy inspection, and then suddenly you find yourself airplane taken away and sold to somebody else. And this has happened numerous times. And so you have to be careful when you're buying an aircraft subject to finance. So make sure you get that in place first, or if you can pay cash. Buy the aircraft and then get it financed afterwards. That's also a good way of doing it. The third thing is using a non-aviation lawyer. Now, when we're talking about private jets, different with the airlines, because airlines, the people that work for the airlines are airplane people, so they know, how to buy and sell airplanes and that. But when we're talking about private jet, it's usually business people that are buying the private jet. And business people buying an aircraft, if they haven't already got aircraft, they won't really know how this is done. And they'll have their trusted lawyers, and they'll just give the deal to their lawyer to do. Very, very bad thing to do. When you're going to buy an aircraft, use an aviation lawyer. It's very important. It's not like buying a house or buying a company. It's buying an airplane. It goes up to 35, 40,000 feet with you and your family and your executives on board. So, you know, the legal side needs to be done carefully because it has happened in the past that people have bought aircraft, or let's say thought they bought the aircraft, and 6 months later someone knocks on the door with all these documents and say, what are you doing flying around with my airplane? Hey, that's my airplane. And the legal work wasn't done properly. And it turns out that they hadn't actually bought the airplane, but they paid for it. So, very important, use an aviation lawyer. Do not use a lawyer that's not an aviation lawyer. Number 4, don't put in lowball offers. And now, how do you know what an aircraft is worth? And again, if you're not an aviation person, you're not in the business aviation space, you don't know what a G550 built in, 2012 is going for right now. So it's important to use a professional which will guide you and say, look, this is the market of the Gulfstream G550 right now. You know, recently there were 10 sold and they sold for this price, blah, blah, blah. And so you have a realistic number there. And so that when you do put the offer in, if the airplane is worth 25 million, don't go in and offer 18.5 because you'll just insult the owner. So come in, obviously you want to negotiate. If it's 25 million is the market, fair market value of the aircraft, maybe come in at 22, 22.5, 23. Show that you're serious. Don't waste people's time. You're not, some businesses you can do that, but not in this business. I mean, these people that own private jets are very smart people. They're very successful people. They know what they're doing, and they don't like people taking them for a ride, basically. So don't put in the lowball offers. And number 5, last but not least, when you do buy an aircraft, it's a good idea, and you'll probably understand why, because of the other 4 things that I just talked about that you need to avoid. It's important for you to be guided through this process by an aviation professional or an aviation broker that understands the market, that works with an aviation lawyer that he or she can recommend, that works with some engineers that he or she can recommend, and just help you through the process in a professional manner. Jumping on controller.com or AvBuyer and looking up, I fancy a Global Express, there's 10 for sale here, I'll just ring these guys up and buy one. You don't really know what you're looking at. When you're looking at specs of an aircraft, unless it's your profession, you don't really know what you're looking at. You're just looking at numbers. So don't try and think you know what you're doing to try and save a buck here and there, because you will pay in the long run. And again, as I said before, this is an airplane. It's going to take you, your family, your executives up in the sky at 45,000 feet. It's not a car, and when something's wrong with the engine, you can just stop by the side of the road and call for help. Now, in an airplane at 45,000 feet, if something goes wrong, the airplane needs to come down. So this is really, really important to understand. That's really it from me on this episode of Biz Jet TV. I do recommend, if you like this episode in particular, there's 2 videos which I'd like you to go and watch, which I think you'll find very useful. One is how to choose the right biz jet. Click on that one and have a look at that one. And the other thing is the 3 weirdest things found on a pre-buy inspection. I'm sure you'll enjoy that one, especially one about the bird's nest. So that's all from Fabrizio Poli here on Biz Jet TV. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already. Share this video with friends and family and other people out there across social media to get the word out there. Give us a thumbs up if you like this episode, and please comment below. We love to hear your comments and suggestions for future content. And that's all from me, all from Fabrizio Poli. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one.